Good evening and welcome to Concord's Town Meeting Study Committee meeting of December 9th, 2024. It's just after 7 o'clock and we're starting. Thank you. So begin with roll as usual. There we go. I didn't ask for a clerk yet. Is anybody able to clerk tonight, please?
I can do it.
Kristen, is that you?
Yep.
Yeah, good. Thank you. So Kristen Haggerty will clerk tonight. I'll take roll. Keith Bergman, please.
Present.
Katie Bresnick, please.
Here.
Thank you, Katie. Kristen Haggerty, please.
Here.
Yeah. Alice Kaufman, please.
I'm here.
Eric Moore, present. Para Sharpatel is expecting to be late. Phil Swain, please.
Here.
Chase Thompson, looks like maybe late. Thinking it's bedtime for kids. And Eric Van Loon, please.
Present.
Thank you. We'll move into the usual, the agenda tonight, public comment as usual. Alice, I just got your minutes, thank you, but we're not gonna approve them tonight, we'll do them in a follow-up meeting. I'll talk a bit about what's been going on, in terms of, chair stuff. The big topic tonight is looking at the work ahead for the committee and figuring out what we wanna work on and what else is missing. That's the big one for tonight. Keith, we'll get a quick update from you on just the regular spring and fall town meetings. And then Chase, there's Chase. Chase Thompson has also joined. Thank you, Chase. So Chase is now present. Chase is a proposal around exploring ways to increase public engagement. And that'll be will turn out to be an engagement subcommittee. So okay, any public comment tonight? The usual 2 minutes, up to 15 for the session. Seeing none, moving forward. Again, thank you everyone for joining. So minutes again, Alice, we've received the minutes from November 12th. Minutes from the 25th of November and the 22nd are still outstanding in due course, please. So chair's comments. So the most recent thing was the meeting of the select board. That was an update from on the work of the committee. The big ask was to get them to engage around this potential warrant article for remote participation home rule petition. So there's an action item there, which is new. Which is at the select board meeting of January 27th. They would like, the chair requested specific language for the warrant. And they'll discuss it and make a decision at that time. So before that then, to contact Concord's representatives, principally Simon Cataldo, who's new to this question, so to speak, but I think also Representative Gentile, and probably prudent to talk to the Wayland Elders people as well. But the question, is going to be from the representatives, what strategy do they recommend to move this question forward as a home rule petition? And then following that, what's the language for the warrant article? And we'll come back and talk about how to get that done. The other thing, and Shannon, I'm going to ask you to weigh in just a moment, please. So one of the decisions at the meeting was that the town, I'll say it wasn't a vote, but the town is receptive the town is working towards a lease for clickers for the coming town meeting and looking to identify funds. And then the wasn't clear how that would be paid for. The select board was really quite open to the town's solutions. So let us know what you're going to do, and we're fine with it, essentially. And then the next select board meeting will look again at potential funding sources for clickers. But that was a step forward in terms of things that will impact town meeting 25. Work that Keith has been driving, I think is well received by the town with respect to both the potential, and the town in this case is Shannon and Donna. So Shannon, sorry, do you have any updates on this question of whether or not the legal notice for the warrant could go out through the bridge?
I don't have an update on that yet, but yeah, so I think once I hear back, I can send an email to the committee because really I just need to find out the price that would be comparatively to printing and mailing the warrant that we traditionally do.
Cool, thank you. So the background is, we're exploring, the idea of sending out, so right now when the warrant goes out, as a legal notice, it goes out in a pretty fat book, so to speak, to the town. And then there's a second mailing, which is really the finance committee report. And that report also has, in effect, as an addenda, the recommendations, from the different boards of the town. And the thing that we're exploring, is to send out a pretty lean warrant as a legal notice, ideally through the bridge, but maybe just as a mailing. And then, at time for the FinCom report, the FinCom mailing, to send out what we've talked about. I forget what you call it, Keith, what I keep calling the briefing book. So it's really a fat book with everything that we can provide.
Briefing, but not brief.
Yeah, briefing will not be, maybe it should be called the meeting book, I don't
The
know.
meeting book.
The meeting book. But to have the fuller mailing go out later in the cycle. There's some scheduling issues around that, Shannon, can you comment on that? In terms of the calendar review?
Yeah, so one of the things that we were looking at was the planning board's public hearing was scheduled quite late on the town meeting calendar. I think a couple of those reasons were because they asked for their meeting date to be on a Tuesday, which is when they traditionally meet for their regular meetings. And then the other thing was that a couple of select board members wanted to make sure that there was enough time for people to receive the warrant before the public hearings happened. But if we sort of are able to do this different idea of going with a leaner warrant and getting that out through the bridge, presumably they'll have enough information. And also the planning board has already requested to move up their public hearing date with the select board. And they have also said that they're going to just try to spread the word about the public hearing as much as they can and about what articles they might be taking up. And then I think the other part of the briefing book is just making sure we work closely with the finance committee who, they author the content of their report and then town staff really just help them with the printing. So I think it would be a more collaborative effort with them too.
Cool, thank you. Eric Dahlberg from the chair of the finance committee reached out to me yesterday, actually, to set up a conversation with him and the member of the finance committee who's going to be sort of the lead on putting the report together, and I can't remember his name, but to coordinate, I made a comment at the select board meeting that the finance committee report was technical, and they're looking for some concrete suggestions from us or from me about the coming report. So I'll engage with them and I'll CC folks. I see that Parashar Patel has joined as well. Thank you, Parashar.
Eric,
Yeah.
on the timetable, I guess I'd want to, and I don't know if you can call up the town meeting time, the 2025 town meeting timetable. It's on the town website, but I'm looking at it and I'll just quote from it. One of the opportunities to save time and have more time available to have a complete briefing book, meeting book with recommendations is, or one area for time savings I was looking at, is that the warrant will close on February 19th, 2025. However, the warrant will not be mailed to households until April 2nd, which seems like an extraordinary amount of time to hold us in suspense about what's in the warrant. When in fact, as soon as the warrant closes, from my experience with town government, as soon as the warrant closes, it only needs one more decision to be made in order to be ready to go, and that is the select board's decision on what order the article should appear in. So, and if that's the case, it would seem like it might be ready to go at some point in by mid February. And if it could go either to the newspaper for publication or to the printer to get the document out, that would get it on the streets by the end of February rather than April
So one,
second. So that gives us additional time for the committees to do their for the public to prepare for the subject matter by knowing what it is, because we may know the titles from following, but there's no, we don't know what the articles say necessarily. So the sooner that information gets out, the sooner frankly, the sooner all the public hearings could start if they wanted to. And the particular concern I had in looking at the schedule was just the finance committee. All the other hearings look like they're, well timed. But anyway, that's it. The principal savings would be in the ability to get the warrant out very shortly after the warrant closes.
Did you say the warrant closes on the 19th?
of February.
19th of February.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing with Concord, well, I mean, there's three separate things here. The first is that deciding the order of items is not just, there are things that very often the select board will be discussing and considering to decide that. And I don't know how soon their next meeting.
March
is
3rd is
after
when
the
they're,
19th.
yeah, March 3rd is when they're proposing it. Is when they're proposing in their schedule to
To
determine
set
the
the
order.
order.
in
Okay,
which
That's
it
2 weeks
occurs.
later.
that's 2 weeks later.
Which
So
is
then-
2 weeks later, so why is it then still another month before the warrant? is-
Well, the second thing is that the warrant includes a summary of each article, impact and pro and con.
Not,
No,
well,
it does.
it doesn't
No,
now.
it doesn't.
The briefing book should have all of that information, including the recommendations from boards and committees. I think from my understanding, a key benefit of closing the key benefit of getting the warrant mailing out relatively early is that the hearings can begin. One difference with this approach, we'll get the comments in just a second. One difference with this approach is that, so the survey showed that everybody reads the warrant, that reads the book, right? So to speak, right? Or they bring it to meeting and read it there.
Well.
So that's relatively speaking, right? So a difference would be that the first thing you see, usually the first thing you see with the warrant mailing is a lot of information. This initial mailing, whether it's a legal notice in the bridge, or whether it's some other sort of skinny mailing from us, from the town, we'll have all that information. That's gonna be different. But the idea again is that when the mailing goes out as a fat mailing, so there's a thick mailing with the FinCom information, all that information is there in that mailing, and all the information is also there online. So I want to go to,
Well, if I could just finish the third point, I had 3 points, and the third is that, and I think that this is picking up on what Carmen said the other,
Yeah.
at our previous meeting. And that is, if all of the warrant could go in the bridge, that would guarantee not only that comes to each house, but that it would be in a form that people would
yeah,
be more likely to pick up and look at, and
yeah.
it would have the a dual effect that the town would, of course, pay for that, and that would be additional revenue for the bridge.
So noted, we haven't, Shannon hasn't had the conversation yet with the bridge to understand what the requirements are, what the cost picture would be. So, but noted, thank you. I want to go to online, first Kristen, then Katie, and then Carmen, please.
And I don't mean to cut in front of Carmen because I think she's probably going to explain this better, but in my experience, there was a lot of work done between when the warrant closed in the select board meetings, like definitely multiple meetings. And I think if we're considering scheduling high interest articles or doing any kind of more agenda type things, I think that does take a full month, or at least 2 select board meetings.
Okay, thank you. Katie, please.
And this is a probably uninformed comment, but one thing I often find very confusing at town meeting is understanding what we're talking about and when. So like, as we skip around different items, I bring my warrant from home. I'm like flipping through. Sometimes they're in order, sometimes they maybe aren't, and I'm very confused. So if we as a suggestion, if there's any way to have what people have in hand that day as an order of what will be discussed, so people kind of know what's going to happen and know, you know, how to plan their time, that would be great if that's possible.
Good, thank
That's all.
you. Good, Carmen, to you, please.
Hi there. I'm in
Hey.
a car, sorry. Shannon can speak better to the incredible amount of back and forth and negotiation among various committees and town staff and the schools and so on that happens in order to produce that schedule that that you have pulled up. Among other things, there is a February vacation that happens in there. We have to have a meeting with town council that involves the schools in order to review all of the warrant language. Sometimes that involves check-ins with bond counsel. And that can't happen without the participation of the schools. And then the actual formatting of the warrant and producing it for printing is a huge task. And then the printers take a week to 10 days to get the thing printed, and then mailing takes a little longer than that. So it is a really huge effort to get as many copies of a substantial document like the warrant out onto the street, and that's why it takes so long.
Good, thank you. Thank you.
Could I offer a rebuttal on that, please?
Very concisely. Please.
Okay, precisely. The amount of time that Concord takes to get a warrant out the door is about a month longer than any place else I've seen. And I would very much like to understand why many of the things that happen after the warrant closes can't happen before the warrant closes. That's how other towns get the document out. And this year may be the best time to experiment with this new approach, because we have a whole extra month to play with. The warrant is closing nearly a month later this year because we're having a June town meeting instead of April. So I think that if we're trying to get more information out to the voters, that we really ought to look at whether there are systemic problems to getting that information out the door. And if so, what can we do to fix it?
Good, thank you. Sounds like we're gonna come back to it in terms of our future work. Thank you. I'm gonna move forward. We'll come back to citizen comment at the close of this section. So what else is going on is, yeah, so I'm giving a talk for the.
So Eric,
Sorry,
I just
sir.
want to mention one thing. You had said that the town is gonna lease clickers for this year's.
That's their intention. I think the funding hasn't been secured yet.
Okay, so
Yeah,
I just want to remind, you have said this before, the schools bought clickers.
Shannon's following up on
Okay.
it, yeah.
And
Yeah.
they're not using them, so maybe we could get those back.
Good, noted. Good, thank you. I'm preparing a talk for the League of Women Voters this Friday, from 10 to 11:30. This is my current outline. I had a conversation with Diana Proctor, who is the moderator for this event. And she suggested that this is an audience which is passionate about town meeting, very well informed about town meeting, and perhaps quite skeptical about change. Those my words, not hers. So you know, that's part of what to expect. I think folks are obviously welcome to come if you're available and interested. I'm really not sure what to ask for from the committee about this talk. I'm still working on it. It's a lot of work. I have a lot of material here, and I will be making cuts and so on. But if anybody is interested in hearing more about this talk before I give it, be happy to hear from you.
I have one thought,
Yeah.
and that is, and it's consistent with Diane said about the league.
Yeah,
If there's any forum or any organization that we will ever be at where the audience will be more interested in
Yeah.
participating in real discussion,
Yeah,
this is it.
yeah,
And so I would strongly urge that the initial presentation be, limited 20, 30 minutes, absolute max.
Yeah.
Because they're gonna wanna have time to talk
yeah, I hear that, I'm with you on that, good, thank you,
and not just talk.
yeah,
Ask questions, probe,
yeah, it's good, it's all good, so. So then looking ahead, winter timeline, Chase is gonna talk later in the meeting, but, I've agreed to sponsor a subcommittee on engagement. That meeting, for the folks who want to attend that, would be a week from this Tuesday, and again, Chase will talk more about that. Our next committee meeting as a whole will be January 13th, and then this meeting with the select board around a warrant article, for a home rule petition to, support a home rule petition, would be on January 27th. Okay, I saw a hand up earlier. I don't see that now, in terms of citizen comments, so I'm gonna keep going and.
I'm
move
here.
into- Oh, there you are, Elizabeth. 2 minutes, please. Thank you.
Oh, less than that. I just wanted to echo, I was getting ready to say the same thing that Keith said about where there's some things that could be done earlier in the process for the warrant. And I recall last year, there was one particular warrant article that had outstanding legal issues. And the answers to those legal issues came after the public hearing with the select board and after the opportunity for the public to make comments at that meeting. So the legal answers came post public comments at the hearing. And so I noticed that the legal review of the warrants happens in mid-March, I believe. And I wasn't quite, and that's a month after the deadline, practically. And it made me wonder if it's more of a question than a statement because I'm a novice at this, but maybe it could speed it up a little bit if the legal review occurred much sooner, giving the public the opportunity to see the warrant article in its true form, not in a later modified form post legal comment. So, I agree with what Keith said, and I think the legal review is just way too late in the process in that particular case. That's all.
Good, thank you. Thank you. So our work here toward better town meetings. I've been thinking about this as how do we solve, I'll say, quote unquote, how do we solve the problems of town meeting? How do we produce a better meeting? And of course, we're just a recommendation group, right? We were charged by the town, but we have no authority, we have credibility, hopefully. And good ideas, hopefully, and well-qualified ideas in terms of the things that we think might be done. But if we want to have impact, then, beyond the recommendation, we need to persuade and to validate. So there's that. We're at a phase where we've done a lot of work this fall. But, I think the work to really sort of have a solid impact on town meeting, still a lot in front of us. And, so my plan tonight is to outline some of that work and to see where we have energy for committing to some of those items. Column on the right, alternated black and blue, this is for readability. Different topics, streamlining, which we've spent a lot of time on, accessibility, being able to, making it easier for people to attend, meeting culture, meeting communications, representation, is town meeting really representative? It's a statistical question, so to speak, and also a question of perceptions, engagement, which is I think the thing that Chase has identified in particular as an additional opportunity for us. We have a report to write, and I'm not ready to start that this week, but that's a significant deliverable from us. And the broader kind of picture around how town government is communicating, boards and committees, how they communicate, and how the public is involved in that leads into what we have with town meeting. And then from a technical perspective, the things that need to change in the website and other ways to sort of provide IT support for the communication around meeting and in boards and committees. So with that, streamlining. These items, again, black and blue, to sort of make them easier to skim. One thing I think that
You don't have the slides up.
Oh, shoot, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. What did happen there?
Eric, I was gonna say something. I overrode your screen sharing to show the town meeting calendars, so that's how your slides disappeared.
Oh, got it. Okay, well, it's quite some time ago. All right, well, one moment, please. So this is the Better Town Meeting slide. I talked through this in some detail. So streamline, I hope this is legible enough in this room. Yeah, and again, you know, I expected people to read this stuff before the meeting, but I don't know. Summarize your ideas and suggestions for the moderator. I think we've made a bunch of sort of practice ideas. Kristen, I'll go to you, please.
One of the things that we haven't talked about, or that I think is really critical to talk about at the same time with streamlining is, you know, I don't want us to lose sight of the purpose of town meeting and how long it takes to actually do this. So in other words, I'm all for, you know, going along the way that we've talked about, which is, you know, kind of getting, recommending that we remove extraneous things or things like that. But, you know, as we've discussed, there's a lot of things that happen and have to happen legally and, you know, all these things that make our town work. And I think it's critical that we capture that. And I don't know if we should, and it's possible, I don't know if, you know, some of our citizens have collected this information in the past and some of the other work that they've done. Like, I think our meetings are about 10 or 12 hours each year. I'm just ballparking. And if we really wanted to, we could kind of figure that out. And even if we were to streamline it, we're not streamlining it to, you know, 3 hours. And so
Right.
wanting to make sure that we understand these are all the things that need to happen. And I think it'll kind of dovetail into the conversation that, you know, Keith's going to talk about with 2 meetings and why that might be more palatable. But I want to make sure that when we're kind of shaving off 10 minutes here, you know, 7 minutes there, that, you know, people don't say, well, I'm not going to come unless it's 2 hours. And then kind of this streamlining work is almost for naught. And if anybody else understands kind of where I'm going with that and can reflect that back and see if I'm heading in a useful direction, please do.
So, thank you. I'm gonna try to reflect it back. So would that be like a run book for meeting? Like, you know, so like, for example, right, the moderator knows a lot, right, about how to run meeting, but, you know, some of that's documented and some of that is just know-how. Is it to really capture kind of a run book for doing meeting?
Not necessarily, although hearing Katie's comment, maybe that is relevant. You know, I think we have a lot available right now about, you know, town meeting and the consent calendar and things like that. But I guess what I'm thinking is some of the information that I've heard when I've asked, you know, certain populations, and again, this will kind of go with Chase's presentation a little bit later, is like, what are people willing to give? And if they're like, well, you know, I'm willing to give like 2 hours, we can't do all of the town meeting business in,
Right.
you know, and so just trying to capture how much time does it really take? And what I really liked about the discussion that we just had briefly about the warrant and was like questioning our assumptions. Does it really take a month? Why or why not? So I just want to make sure when we are kind of examining some of these things that we look at like that foundational piece. You know, what do we really need to do and how long does it take to do it? And, you know, and then the questions, you know, Eric, that you ask often is like, what do we lose if we do X or Y, or what do we gain? So I just want to make sure that when we streamline, you know, we can still get everything that needs to get done, you know, so kind of maybe the
Right.
have to versus the nice to do, that kind of thing.
Got it. Okay, good. Thank you. I'll go to Katie, please. Katie Fresno.
And I think to build on that point, I think there will be some people who just will never have more than 2 hours to give, but allowing people to plan their time better, that their 2 hours that they do have to give can be how they want to use their time at town meeting. So making it a
Sure.
little bit more predictable so that people can attend when they can, and they can
Yeah.
attend for the part that they want to, not making that hard.
Good, thank you. So I'm gonna go back to, the items here. Is there stuff that people wanna take ownership over? I'll say F, which is sort of a wonky thing, is, I figured out a way to time code a town meeting from a YouTube transcript, and so I'm interested in writing some code, because I like to write code. Writing some code to basically look and segment sort of the different, how long it takes to do different pieces of meeting. And, once that works for Concord's meeting, I might be able to do that to look at other meetings as well, just as a point of reference. So that's probably the least important thing on this list. I think something that is actually really high value is, so we have a lot of ideas, but if we take those ideas, this is item B. If we take those ideas and go back and redo town meeting 24, what's the meeting that we get if we've applied those ideas? You know, another thing, again, what do you mean by practice?
Do you mean 24, or is that a typo? Do you mean 23?
Last year's town meeting, or the town meeting that we had in May of 24.
This year's.
This year's. Yeah. Last fiscal year, I don't know. Yes, look at how the May 24 town meeting would have played out with our changes in mind. As a, you know, I think it's essential, actually. Are there items here that people want to take leadership on?
Well, can you tell me a little bit more about what you are looking at for E, comparing Concord's town meeting
Sure.
to North Andover and
Sure.
Long Meadow? And why
So there are
those?
two moderators I've heard, you know, reputationally good things about. And there might be, you know, another town meeting, another open town meeting that is a really, you know, really good meeting. But we have a very good meeting, but I think it's interesting to sort of just see. It's like, you know, for example, I went to the Bedford special town meeting. It was really interesting. They flew through stuff until they got to a really substantive, chewy article. But a citizen petition. But it's just interesting to see it, right? And so you think about best practice, you know, or just other examples of good town meetings. What can we learn?
Well, you know, I also went to the Lexington town meeting.
Yeah.
To see how a representative town meeting operated. Which was good, it was interesting, thank you, Ned, for telling us about that. So I didn't know if there was something specific about these two. I have now been to Wayland
Yeah.
and Lexington. I'm happy to go to others and report out what's good
Sure.
and bad. I mean, I learned quite a lot from Lexington about
Yeah.
things that we might want to apply in the way that we prepare our community for town meeting.
Yeah,
They use much greater use of video.
sure. Yeah, you know, we'll still be a committee while these meetings happen in the spring, those further off. But you know, things are on video as well. So, yes, please, David Allen?
Caution, in singling out one or two town meetings to consider. David Carr has watched on video past town meetings of several towns, and he can report that they are sometimes dramatically different. There is a culture that's specific to a town, and you have to take account of that when you look at what's there. Again, caution, be sure you're getting a full sample of the possibilities. Like, there are 201 towns in
Sure.
Massachusetts. There may very well be 201 different town meetings here.
Okay,
Sure as hell, a
Yeah.
number of them.
Thank you. I think, you know, I drew these, I called these towns out because of the moderator reputation. So I'm interested in that perspective specifically. Again, items on streamlining that people want to sign up for.
I
well,
would, oh, I don't know if somebody else is volunteering. I would sign up for summarizing our ideas and suggestions from the moderator, but I don't think we've had that discussion yet, right? We've got some survey data, but I wouldn't consider that as our suggestions yet.
Yeah, I think it's a work in progress. I think, you know, ultimately, I think we need to come up with something that we can hand to the moderator, so to speak. Great, thank you. Katie, please.
I almost feel like it might be useful to have like a brainstorming session, which maybe that is what there is tonight, to make a list of the ideas that we still want to explore as a committee, and then divvy those up for looking into further, because I don't know that we have, but beyond, at least maybe it's been a while, beyond the couple of things that we were required to look at based on last year's warrant and the town meeting. I don't know that we've had that discussion.
So good, thank you. I'll take as a future agenda item to talk about everything we think the moderator could do, as it were, and collect that. So that's an action item. I'm gonna move forward to accessibility. So the big item here with respect to town meeting.
Oh, before you, I thought you were looking for volunteers.
I am.
Streamlining.
Yeah.
I'm not sure which category that it fits in, but I would like to continue to pursue timeline improvements. There's a whole lot of questions that I would like to have. One is on the matter of, well, we can't close we can't post the warrant early because we're discussing the order of the articles for weeks on end.
Yeah.
And there are high interest articles that have to be decided. I just looked through the annual town meeting warrant again for 2024. It doesn't identify what the high interest articles were by the time the warrant got posted, nor did it even say what day we were going to be discussing.
Well, that's
Yeah,
because the process.
Right.
Wait until the hearing.
Right.
To find out.
Exactly
What-
so, exactly so.
And that's,
So,
the
right.
moderator goes to that.
That's right, and
Moderator makes the
that's my
decision.
point, exactly, that those decisions don't get made by the time the warrant can be posted.
So
They get made, and as far as I can see, they weren't even reported in the finance committee's book. I'm not sure how, which, neither of the two mailings told people, what the night was when we were gonna have the vote on, topics of particular, particular interest.
so Keith.
So that seems to be something that can wait for the second
Right.
publication.
So I'm persuaded, there's a lot of work to be done there.
Yeah.
I think you've got you next to it. Exploring and improving the meeting timeline, the meeting preparation timeline.
Right.
Good, thank you. Very good.
So, but there is a difference between the order in the warrant and the schedule of when the discussions take place.
Exactly.
That is the prerogative of the moderator. The
The-
moderator can decide, that the high interest articles will be scheduled on a particular time, shortly before the meeting. It doesn't have to be something that is printed. And
So-
it's not likely to be printed.
Yeah.
The things change.
Right, you don't have to delay the warrant for a month for something you're not going to have determined by the select board, it's going to be determined by the moderator.
The order is pretty much of the printing is fixed, almost. It's the schools, the town is in the first few. And then, of course, there's a few procedural articles. The enterprise funds are at the end.
Right.
And, the citizen petitions are somewhere in the middle, but, that order doesn't mean anything other than that's the printing order.
Got it.
The important order is when the moderator schedules.
Right, because there's.
Guys, we are getting way off track.
No, we're not.
No,
We're not.
We're-
We're talking about
We're scheduling work.
the time, all
We're
right.
scheduling
All
work.
right, here's what,
Yeah.
all right, so here's the additional point. That just to wait a month to determine the articles in the warrant is counterproductive when half of the articles are pulled out and voted on in the first 20 minutes of the meeting as part of the consent calendar. And the rest of the important ones are plopped down on a particular night. So those determinations are completely out of the select board's control. So I think that the select board should be able to share the warrant at a much earlier time for the town to be able to look at it. Because if they're waiting for either of those other two things, they don't control it.
So, good, your only issue, Keith, we're gonna talk about it, but I wanna move on tonight. Thank you.
I know.
No, thank you.
Listen, Mr. Chairman, part of the credibility
Yeah.
of this committee is gonna come from our basing our discussions on understanding the factual reality.
So, when it
And what
comes
has
back-
just been stated is not factually accurate. Actually,
you know
it's
what?
by a matter of law. So the select board sets the order of the warrant. Once the warrant order has been set, then there are three things that can change that. One is the moderator taking things out based on the consent calendar. The second thing is the moderator taking things, scheduling high interest articles. Otherwise, things by law go in the order unless, again, there's a proposal during the course of the meeting to change things. And part of the reason for that is that's how the public is alerted
Right,
to when things are gonna happen. But of course,
right.
if there's no limit on the amount of debate, things can go on, or they can come quickly.
Right, so I understand that, I believe Keith understands that. The point that I wanna make is that we're not gonna figure this out right now. Keith identified an issue that he wants to work on. I'm happy to have him work on that. Now, what the facts of that are, I don't care about it right now. What I care about is he identified an issue and he's gonna work on it. We can come back to what he's learned, what he's got right, what he's got wrong at a different time. But we have other work to do in this meeting tonight. That's why I'm being very defensive about it. So appreciate my perspective on this. We don't have to answer all of Keith's questions tonight.
I do very much appreciate your perspective.
Yeah.
And as a general matter, I think that it's important for us, as the time goes through the hourglass, that we focus more and more, as I think Katie suggested, and maybe Kristen, on specific things that we're gonna wanna be either recommending or not and discussing. Whereas if we expand what we're talking about and thinking about with a bunch of energy going to other town meetings or with all due respect, data analysis of how things went, I fear we'll end up not having time.
Good, so
what's
this
most important?
brings me to accessibility. Top item in accessibility is a remote participation home rule petition, right? The article coordination, speaking to the representatives, producing the draft for warrant article. You are the best person to do that. Will you take that?
Yeah.
Good, thank you. Thank you.
I'm sorry, which one is Eric Van Loo taking?
Speaking to the representatives, figuring out what the strategy that they recommend is for the home rule petition. And then
Okay.
producing the text for an article for the warrant.
Okay,
Yeah, so that's good, thank you. You're gonna have to wait, please. So the second,
I can tell you,
I need you to wait, please.
of course.
I'm not recognizing you right now, thank
Still
you.
will want to hear.
Okay, thank you. So the second item, which is actually also quite important, is to develop a policy and a procedure for ADA remote participation accommodation. The ADA coordinator for Concord, is Megan Zamuto, deputy town manager. We talked about, folks who can't leave the house, who'd like to be able to attend town meeting. I'm not sure, the policy is who qualifies for this accommodation. The procedure is how would it work, right? Is it, chances are basically there's, so to speak, a virtual meeting room, which is Zoom based. There's some way of qualifying the participants. There's some way of authenticating the participants. And during the course of the meeting, there is someone, essentially a teller, I believe a teller, I could be wrong about the detail, is basically monitoring that room. But how that works, how it gets set up, and again, how it qualifies, and also how is it that we sort of notify the public that this accommodation is available is a really big question for us. And I think it's something important that we tackle for our work this year. My question is, who would like to take leadership on that?
Is this even legal?
Yeah, it's legal. There's a Massachusetts policy around accommodation this way. Again, we have an ADA coordinator. In Carlisle, they did something with basically a Zoom meeting. So it's legal. It's an obligation of the town. It's an underused service. But it's something that when we talk about accessibility, it's something we need to be doing. So. And again, the question is who would like, Shannon, please?
I just wanted to note that the ADA coordinator is actually Jess Porter. She's our assistant town manager.
Oh, was it Megan? No,
It
I'm
was
wrong.
Megan.
Sorry.
It was Megan very, very briefly when it was right before we hired Jess, actually. But it is Jess, and she's also the head of HR and Human Services.
Got it.
So this is something other towns do, like Carlisle,
Carlisle does it, yeah.
and you can vote.
Apparently, yeah. It's not remote participation in voting. The state, the state allows it up to the point, the state allows it as long as it doesn't essentially change the character of the meeting. So if it's 5 people, no problem. If it were 300 people, I think there would be a problem. So.
Right, well, I can look into this.
Yeah.
I've never heard of it before, and
Yeah.
I think it's what we're talking about for our home rule petition. And the fact that we can accommodate people through the ADA, that just surprises me.
I'll send you a follow-up, Phil. I've got some information on it.
All right,
And
I'll-
once you read the policy, you'll go, oh,
Okay,
yeah,
all right, so
Yeah.
policy is not statute, right? It's a-
correct,
Okay.
correct. Yeah, good,
So
thank you.
I'd like to talk with you about it too, because I learned some things happening, observed remote participation with voting.
Sure, okay. And I'll get in touch with Jeff.
Could
Yeah,
I
thank you.
contribute something on the ADA accessibility issue?
Please.
Okay. So
Carmen, your vocal quality is really poor. And I'm not hearing you at all. Carmen, we'll have to come back to you, but noted that you'd like to follow up on that. Yeah, we can't hear you at all, Carmen, I'm sorry.
had a lengthy about
Yeah, Carmen, we're not able to hear you. I'm gonna ask that you come back in a little bit later. Other items under accessibility for town meeting 25. I believe that we have a citizen petitioner's guide. I could be wrong about that. I know
I'm sorry, real quick about the ADA. Is that only ADA remote participation, or are we also looking at a broader definition
can
of?
you hear
No, I
me
can't
now?
hear you, Carmen, I'm sorry, no. My understanding is it's only ADA, and so I don't know what the criteria, part of the policy would be establishing criteria.
And the only reason I ask is that somebody asked me about a closed caption. We only have it in one of our 2 rooms, and so I didn't know if we wanted to look at multiple things. I thought that was a good point.
Interesting.
But I think the ADA remote participation is a bigger fish to fry. So if people want to do that, and then we can kind of make a smaller list for things that are probably more manageable.
Good, thank you. Also under accessibility for town meeting 25, quite specific. Do we want to look at a side room for parents with young kids? For example, upstairs where the library is in the high school, could we have camp families and kids in that space or in the lounge area outside the library? What would it take to do that?
Before you go too far down this road, and I'll let Katie talk, if the meeting starts at 7 p.m. and goes till 10 o'clock at night, a meeting where we have young kids is not a reasonable expectation. But Katie, if you want to add to that, and I've done some I know my experience, and I brought my kids to a lot of town meetings, and I know, and then I've also I've gone to 2 PTG meetings and talked to them as well. But Katie, you could definitely. So I just want to make sure we don't propose something that just actually doesn't solve the actual problem.
Yeah, sure, I get you. Katie, please.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm happy to see if this is possible, but I agree. I don't really think this would be used because the kids will be in bed and people don't want to drag their kids to something. If we had a meeting on a weekend, this would definitely be something that I would have used. Like I brought a 3-year-old to town meeting and it didn't go well. And I would have loved to have a space he could stay with me and listen, but not on a weeknight. But I think it's worth documenting if we decide not to pursue this, that we considered this and we didn't pursue it for that reason versus thinking of this as something, you know, we're not considering this population. But I just don't think that people will, or maybe they'll use it for an hour in the beginning.
Or Katie, maybe what you could say is a side room for parents would be useful at these dates and times, these days and times. And then we can, because we haven't really talked about that. You know, changing, you know, the day again. So
Yeah.
thank you for
I
being
just-
willing to do that. I was just like, nope, 7 p.m. is not going to work. So thank you for thinking about that.
Okay, thank you. So Katie, would you follow up with that, please?
Sure. Yep.
Yeah. So one thing that came up in discussing the hearings process was that there isn't, to my understanding, Shannon, there isn't a policy per se for the select board with respect to conducting hearings and using, you know, in presentations, both in terms of there's a practice around right now about using hybrid, and there's a practice this year for doing the presentations as part of the hearings. But last year, for example, was quite different. And my read is that there's an opportunity to recommend to the select board a policy for that. Shannon, does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. I think if I probably would recommend that for all boards that have public hearings, like the policy apply to the select board, FinCom, and planning board, since they also have hearings. But yeah, it's always been a tradition to have the public hearings with the presentations as like a dry run before town meeting to get feedback and stuff. But I would just recommend that it be all three.
Good. Keith, would you consider folding that into your work about the pre-meeting timeline? Sure. Please, thank you. Moving forward, Alice, I don't know if we need to make a vote about representative town meeting. We discussed it. Is your sense that we should look forward to making a motion about it?
I don't think we need a motion, because that would mean we'd have, I don't know that there's support on the board to move forward with representative town meeting. So I don't know that we need a motion to accept my recommendation.
Okay.
It was just one more point of discussion.
Okay.
If we're
I
gonna
wrote
have
a
a
lengthy-
report that recommends, we explored representative town meeting and do not recommend we pursue it.
Mhm.
I think that that's an easy motion.
Okay, so,
So I move that we vote to accept Alice's recommendation and not pursue a representative town meeting.
I'll ask that you consider your motion and that we take this up as an agenda item in a future meeting.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, but you know,
Good. No, but next time we vote, so, yeah.
it doesn't have to be that fancy, just I move.
Yeah,
This-
can I just inquire,
It's in the report that I wrote up.
since we
But I
have
did
so
not
many
recommend.
things to deal with in the future. And I think there's a consensus on this, I mean,
So
why
Alice,
the rationale? for not
Alice
going?
produced an updated report in representative town meeting. It hasn't been distributed to the committee. It would be correct for that to go to the committee before we have a motion on it. So I don't want to do it right now because we're doing something else.
I'll make the same motion as soon as the report comes out.
Good, thank you. Yeah, good. And it will be happily received, believe me. So Keith, here's an item, capture town meeting calendar guidance as a practice recommendation for the select board. So that's something you're thinking about. Do we want to undertake to make a practice recommendation about the use of clickers in meeting? This was mentioned, it came up, Carmen, in your remarks to the select board, you said, oh, maybe they're gonna, my paraphrase. Actually, I don't know if you can hear it well. So do we want to go deeper into how and when to use clickers, or do we want to leave that to the meeting, so to speak? Is that something we want to undertake?
I think we should discuss it more.
Okay, good.
Well, we did have a long discussion without a consensus on it, I think, and we had a very carefully worded motion that the use of clickers would be beneficial or something like that. I don't think we're gonna be able to come to an agreement on much more than that. Like, use clickers for whatever sort of motions there are, or votes there are at town meeting. I think that's something that is gonna be, again, in the discretion of the moderator.
I believe that was the decision, that we would leave, rather than dictate from our perspective when and how the clippers will be used, that we would defer to the moderator to make decisions about is an article, in her view, controversial enough that it needs to be voted by clicker, or if it's an overwhelming sense of the town meeting that of one way or another, that clickers would not be necessary.
Okay, good.
It's a moderator's discretion.
Good.
And we're gonna have a hard time getting much more than that. Agreeing on much more than that.
Good, thank you. Other items here, so. One thing that I will take is to establish a standing survey and analysis script for town meeting attendees. So last year, town meeting 24, I wound up kind of hacking together a survey, an exit survey for town meeting that was useful. It wasn't something we had on the shelf. And my belief is that for future town meetings, we'd like to have that available, basically, as a thing we're just able to do with every meeting.
Is this one of the ones on your list?
Meeting culture, yeah.
Meeting culture,
Yeah, item E.
establish a standing survey.
Wait, how is that
What's the
different than the
difference?
one that Carmen, the survey that Carmen has? We have it like on paper and then it's also on the website?
So the one for town meeting 24 I did, we didn't have one.
Oh, I think we have had them in the past.
We have had them in the past, right?
Oh, but just not the
it
same one,
wasn't-
or it's just like ad hoc?
I think some consistency year to year would be valuable.
Yep, okay.
It sounds as though, it might be, I really don't know why we didn't have one already. And I know that we've had them in the past, and I know that they take effort, so I think there's a benefit to having something that we can just use. Katie, please?
I was gonna say, I can take the one from last year maybe and see if I can make something that would be sustainable year over year as a
That'd
first
be great.
pass.
That'd be great. I think the choice about how to host the survey, and will inform how and also the question form will inform, you know this stuff. I mean, how do we have to munch the data basically to do analysis, given the survey is a real consideration, so.
Could you just say more about what analysis script means?
Yeah, so, the specific question format of the survey, the survey results get stuffed into a spreadsheet format. But particularly when you have multiple responses, all of the different responses are in one cell in the spreadsheet, and so you have to write a little bit of code to separate the responses into separate columns to make the analysis of the descriptive statistics a lot easier. So it's moving data around a spreadsheet, so to speak. And it just takes a bit of code, but not everyone has that, so.
I would be curious if Carmen can hear us. I know that when I was moderator, we had the survey every year. It was always available. The number of people who actually filled it out were very, very small.
Sure.
And Carmen if you can hear us, are many people, have many people filled it out in the last few years?
Go ahead, Carmen, please.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, nice and clear, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, I'm going in and out of cell service. Yeah, I have regularly done a survey over the last, 8 years. Sometimes we've had pretty good response, sometimes not. What we have done is put it in a box at the meeting. We've had a box to collect them at the meeting. We've had a box at the town clerk's office where people could drop them off, or in the town manager's office. And we've also put the same survey online and let people know that it's there so they can fill it out online. And once we started putting it online, that boosted by maybe 25 or 30% how many people did respond to the survey. But the surveys vary year to year, depending.
Yeah, we just lost you, Carmen.
What we were
Yeah, sorry, now we cannot hear you again.
wondering about. you know?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay, sorry.
that's all right. Thank you.
Right outside.
I think we had about 100 responses to the survey this year,
Okay.
which is not, you know, it's not 100%, but it's something. So, and we get useful things from
I
that.
wonder if rather than have the survey available on the, you know, for someone to grab on the way out, if it was the last page of the warrant and the moderator would make reference to, please
Interesting,
fill out a
yeah.
survey.
With the QR code. Yep, definitely.
Yeah, good. Yeah, the wish to promote it. Yeah, good, thank you. I have on here longer term impact beyond town meeting 25, shadowing the moderator, to document workflow and judgments. This goes back to sort of understanding what the moderator is doing, to make town meeting work. Is anybody interested in that?
What do you need, shadow?
Interview Carmen, just ask her questions, understand the work of the moderator, and as she does it for Concord.
What are the timelines for this? When are we trying to have these things back?
You know, I mean, some stuff, right, the town meeting 25 stuff, we wanna make recommendations sooner than later, so that they can be applied to meeting, and that's variable. Longer term impact stuff, it's just really by the time we wrap the committee up.
I think I could take on the shadow function. I know that, talking to the moderator about the way things are working now is critical to understanding how they could be changed.
Good, thank you. Okay, moving forward. Meeting communications, probably the most important thing here, is what can we do to assure Wi-Fi access during town meeting 25? And this is just to keep attention on that question, so that we're able to, I mean, it's big, right? If the Wi-Fi is broken again, or, you know, I mean, it's not like the school's controlled getting hacked, but, you know, I think when we talk about communications, the biggest issue is that the Wi-Fi is not working well in that meeting. So I guess from my perspective, I'd like to feel that there's somebody on this, so that we are able to just keep some attention on the question. Is there someone who wants to run with that?
What do you mean? I mean, the Wi-Fi at the high school, is that the issue?
Yeah,
Didn't work last
it
year.
didn't work last year.
It didn't, I don't know that.
Yeah,
It doesn't work a lot of the time.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, we haven't really looked at other locations for the meeting also.
Wi-Fi at the location of town meeting. Fix a spot.
So Shannon's done some investigation, I guess it's still going on really, around, you know, sort of what it costs to configure the meeting differently. You know, use of, but for town meeting 25, we know where the meeting's gonna be. And it's just making sure that, the top item is making sure that, that Wi-Fi is gonna be supported, or, you know, if not, why not? I'd like to just put attention on it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I guess I'm curious, I mean, if we asked anybody now, they'd say, like, yep, it'll be there, because they don't know any different.
Right,
I would imagine that's a school issue and not a town IT issue.
right.
I have a feeling that the schools insulate themselves from the town, but I don't know. I guess I would, Katie, I'll defer to you. I was gonna mention something else, but go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You can finish up.
No, I guess I would just say, I don't know why, I know town meeting 2025 is coming up, but it's in June, it's 6 months away, and, you know, there is prerogative to change the location of the town meeting, even for 2025, should we decide that was going to be, you know, more useful for whatever. So, I mean, so researching Wi-Fi at the school is fine, but perhaps we want to do that with alternative locations as well.
So, Shannon, if I could call on you, please. You've done some cost analysis around different configurations for meeting. My sense is that things are locked in for this year, in terms of meeting hosting. But what, so what I hear, Kristen, is, you know, you're interested in looking at alternate configurations. So maybe you can work with Shannon to sort of look at the difference in the costs of things, as it were.
I mean, I think this is one of the discussions that we never haven't had yet, which is, you know, what are we trying to do when we try to have more people there? If we're trying to make it family friendly, does it mean that, you know, is one of the considerations a change in time, date, and location? And it would be great to kind of have that discussion. And I see Parshar's hand up as well.
Okay, good. So definitely then we come back to that for an agenda item as well. So thank you.
But before we leave, I really don't think checking on this high school's Wi-Fi is the job of this committee. I think it's a school issue. You know, you can, as Kristen said, we can call the school right now, you can have Wi-Fi in Juneau, be fine.
Yeah.
What else are they gonna say?
All right, you know, look, yeah, so, okay, I'm gonna recognize Parashar and look him back. So Parashar and then Shannon, please. Yeah.
So I think Phil basically said what I was gonna say. It seems like we're trying to boil the ocean with some of these items. We've got a lot of work to do. I don't think we should be concerned about Wi-Fi in June, frankly.
Okay, thank you. Katie, sorry, and then Shannon.
That's okay. Well, I don't really know that there's anything we can really do about the Wi-Fi. I think it is of some concern of this committee because this is one of the things that is important for people to be able to come to meeting and feel comfortable at meeting. Last year with no Wi-Fi and no cell service at the school, I couldn't contact my babysitter. They couldn't contact me if they needed something. It wasn't a comfortable situation to sit there and not be in contact. So I think that is a big issue for parents who are leaving their kids at home. Is there something we can do about it? I don't know, but I think it's worth checking into and making that known as something that's important for the experience of town meeting.
Good, thank you. Please wait. Shannon, I recognize you.
Yeah, I think the cost analysis that's really been done so far in like looking into other locations, we've only looked into other public buildings. And I don't think there is one other location that is completely constructed at this point that would be able to hold the full capacity. I think, you know, we talked about the middle school. And I think I also remember the new middle school. I think the auditorium is supposed to be quite large. So that's definitely something that could be looked into the future. But also, I don't know if we would want to look into perhaps some of the private schools in Concord or just other more unique locations, because right now we really looked into like satellite locations. So the high school still being the main location. And then, you know, last year we shortly considered Harvey Wheeler for a satellite location because with our fiber and stuff, it's pretty easy to actually connect the streams and technology. But when we looked into that further last year, it was actually quite a bit more expensive from a staffing perspective, not even necessarily connecting the technology because IT was prepared to do that all via Zoom and not really like bring in a ton of other AV support for that.
So thank you. So to talk about that would be to have a little cost model in front of us and to kind of lay it out and see what the unknowns are as well. So maybe that's when we come back to talk about this in a future meeting. We can draw on what you have for that. Good, thank you. Keith? Please?
Yeah, I think it would be reasonable for the committee to draw a conclusion at some point about whether the site that the select board chooses to hold town meeting should be accessible to Wi-Fi or not. It's not our responsibility to solve how that is. I think it's theirs. But if we're gonna continue to require Wi-Fi and not get it, what's going on here?
Okay, good, thank you. Thank you. So I've done some work, actually, Shannon, I know I owe you and Donna an email follow-up on the information formats for the warrant and meeting book, quote unquote. I also will follow up with the Minuteman Media Director about throughput for video. One thing that I think is actually really important for us is to talk with the Bridge about how town communication around, you know, stuff like town meeting and what the bridge can provide, can complement. I don't know how to have a conversation with the bridge. I don't know what the right way to talk about that is, but it's, you know, so two independent entities, right? And of course, you know, the bridge has to make its own decisions around audience and cost and so on. But I think, you know, even as we talk about this question around, you know, can we put a legal notice in the bridge for a concise warrant? We don't know how to talk about it. And so I feel like there's an opportunity to sort of explore that, but I'm not sure how to structure that conversation.
I can help with that.
Cool, good, thank you.
I can give you some guidance.
That'd be great, please. Good. I've already kind of put my foot in my mouth around the FinCom report. And you know, what I think is that a complement to that report that is for people who don't already understand town finance would be a thing that would help the primary product there be a lot more readable. And I'm happy to talk with the FinCom team about what that could be. But you know, I also you know, two other folks that served in FinCom here, and I'd like to get their input as well around that. Do Parashar or Phil, do you have any appetite for working on this question around how the FinCom communications could better serve the voter at town meeting?
Yeah, Eric, I'll raise my hand on this. Happy to
Okay,
work with
great.
Phil if he's got time also. But
Sure, happy with that, but it's not clear to me what you're talking about. You want to add to the FinCom report a you know, some sort of basic lessons about municipal finances? Is that-
Essentially, yeah, I wouldn't add it to the FinCom report, but like, we don't have a fact, right? Some towns have a town finance fact, right? Frequently asked questions around town finance or glossary, right? So, you know, our report, our FinCom report has evolved over the time. You know, I'm not saying we should change it. I think, you know, I think that we can complement it by some introductory information. It helps people really understand what they're reading.
Right, so look at the other towns' fact sections and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, Parashar and I can work on that.
Okay, good, thank you. So moving forward, Katie and I discussed, in particular, yeah, Katie, please.
Oh, I was just gonna offer for Parashar and Phil, if you need like a test case of understanding as a novice, let me know. I'm happy to weigh in on what I don't understand.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a
Good.
lot of terms like the tax levy, and I mean, there's just like some basic terms
Money,
that get
yeah.
thrown around that'll be
Well,
helpful.
And actually, you know, and we appreciate that, and I'll take you up on it, but what would be really good, we tried to go a little bit there last year. If you can just read the first 10 or 15 pages and tell us what concepts were not communicated clearly. Thank you.
Good, thank you.
But that is what you're talking about, right? Levy limit, bonds and all that stuff.
Levy limit, guideline spending and all that. We tried to get into some of that. So let us know what we didn't do well.
Yeah,
I'm gonna also say the same thing I said earlier about the recommendation is not only rely on the 15 entry, the first 15 pages of the FinCom report, but to have many 2-minute segments on video.
yeah.
And people can just say, what is the levy? Why, you know, where does it come from?
Free cash.
Yeah, when and how to use free
Yeah.
cash, you know, things that are really simple to describe that somebody may not be able to find in 15 pages of text.
Totally. Katie, this, you know, we've been talking a bit around how do we understand how representative town meeting is. I kind of put this page together for you. You know, I think you just did a study on distribution by age, active voters versus town meeting participants. We're not gonna talk about that. I actually have a picture of what you sent me, but for future work of the committee, I think, you know, we really need to sort of come up with some answers around representation or lack thereof. And these are the things that I identified as work items under the representation question. And we can talk about that now, we can talk about it offline, but I think this speaks to your interests as well.
Yeah, I can take this on. I think in terms of determining how whether it's representative or not, that is still, I think, subjective, but I can put together some slides that we can talk through and discuss where we want to go and who we want to target if we do
Great.
find that there's a gap.
Yeah, I obviously have interest in this as well, so we'll find a way. Good, thank you. Engagement, Chase, we're gonna go to you by 8:30, okay? But I think, you know, some of the things that we've looked at before around engagement or questions, right? I never followed up with the 8th grade civics teachers in Concord to understand what they teach about town meeting, or if there's an opportunity there. One of the things that came up, and if somebody else wants to take that up, they're welcome to. One of the things we've talked a little bit about, is that an intro to town meeting video for new to Concord audience might be helpful. You know, we have a guide to town meeting, and, you know, as Alice was just saying, that, you know, video is a different medium, for explaining what town meeting is about. And, you know, as well, there's the document that we do have right now. I think, Chase, the marketing Civic Concord to the rising generations is my language around, your broad initiative. So I have you penciled in there. And I think, you know, we don't need to decide this now, obviously, but I think, you know, as we look at the representation questions, and you see where we need additional guidance, I'm wondering both will we do another forum of some form, not the league vote forum, but another forum of forums to be guided by the public. And I think as we get into April and May, I think very definitely we want to basically have things that allow us to sort of invite the public in and talk about what we're doing. But that's to be scheduled. I'm wondering about another survey, but I can't answer that question right now. Kristen, please.
Regarding another forum, the feedback that I heard from a couple of people was when we held them in September and October, that was a really busy time of the year for a lot of activities. And so there were people that couldn't come then. So that was interesting feedback. I want to be careful with survey fatigue. And I'm not sure what else we're going to get back. But regarding engagement, the only other thing I was going to say is I did mention to the Bridge editors about like did you know type of feature in their paper, so they could say like, did you know that this is how the trash barrels were decided? We have a public works commission, and like, did you know that like this committee does pollinator stuff, or like, because there's just such a wide variety of things. So in terms of but with all that and the 8th grade civics and things like that, we might want to put that on a, like, these are things that would be great to pursue, rather than maybe trying to nail everything down this season.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. Elizabeth Moore, I'll recognize you, please.
Hi, yeah, just what about a post-meeting forum when things are still fresh in people's mind, like what worked, what didn't, just especially if we're going to be using clickers for the first time, it might be a great opportunity to get some feedback rather than a survey. Because, or even at the end of, if we have any extra time at the end of the meeting itself, but probably a separate meeting.
Good, thank you.
You're welcome. And may I ask one quick question? Because I just missed something and I was listening closely. Who is taking up clickers out of the group? When you were going through roles and responsibilities.
So it seems out of our hands at this point. I think who's taking up clickers out of the group?
To do. We
I
don't have the right
I don't think we have a specific follow-up schedule for clickers right now.
Okay.
I think we're waiting to see whether or not they're going to be in meeting. And I think we'll be guided by the moderator's sense as to what she's looking for from us around clicker use.
Okay, just on that note, I noticed that we're kind of, it looks like we're heading towards rentals with them. And so I think a global question is this a test year? Is it a test year, or are we saying we are implementing clickers? And if it's a test year, I know there's been conversations about using clickers some of the time, but not all of the time. And I think if it's a test year, we really have to gather the data and analysis from how it works. And so the only way to really do that is to use it for every vote. And and so I just, I'm a strong proponent of using them for every vote, and so are others.
Sure.
But I don't understand whether this is a test or whether this is like we are implementing clickers and this year we're renting, maybe we won't next year. And so,
Yeah, sure. I think, what I expect is that we'll learn, that we, the moderator meeting will learn from use of clickers, and adapt over time. I think I'll take your suggestion that we might want to try to identify criteria for whether how clickers might be working well or not,
Okay,
and
great.
using criteria to help us learn. But
Okay,
I
and
wouldn't
then-
characterize this as a test year or not.
okay,
So,
and then
okay.
is someone taking up the issue of increasing parent participation or caregiver participation? I know you said
Well,
maybe ditching the side room, but is there someone who would
Yeah.
be kind of looking at that more closely? Because that's still a big concern.
Yeah, it's a complicated question, right? Because, it's how long the meeting is, when the meeting is scheduled. You know, so I think for the committee, we continue to have a lot of focus in making it possible for parents to attend. So I think it's a committee level responsibility, and I'd say that I own that as well. But I think, within the committee, certainly Katie's been a real champion for parents, among others. And so, I think, coming back to the question that Kristen raised about, can we look again, at when we actually meet? I think is responsive to that concern as well. Thank you. I'm gonna go forward. So let's see, yeah, the reporting, I am, there's some more work to do in terms of the data analysis and presentation for the survey from October. I'd like to do some cleanup on what we did, for May. And then I think, when we get into the report, I think there's a question about how to really best present that information. And Katie, I'll be guided by your standards for that. How we do that, I don't know, but I think you're your best judge as to how that would go. When we get into sort of the, March, April timeframe, rolling up recommendations for the moderator, the select board for the town will be part of our work. I think, again, talking about forms and so on, this is work that's we're gonna really get into in a few months. I'm not gonna spend time on it now. I'm not gonna get into this stuff. This is mostly stuff that I'll say that I'm kind of championing. And so we'll have to look at my time on this. Other people are welcome to contribute to it. And again, the IT questions as well, are things that I see myself championing, and the other folks who want to contribute are welcome to. And we can come back and talk about what some of these things are, at a later time and watching the schedule. So Keith, let me go to you, about, just 5 minutes in regular and spring fall town meetings. Just as a quick update or.
Sure, yeah,
Really 5 minutes.
the initial suggestion that I made was that we look at rounds of spring and fall town meetings and road testing the idea of a fall town meeting with staff. I didn't really find any takers. And I'd say it's in a number of concerns. One was that, I guess, institutionalizing a second town meeting in the fall might encourage the finely honed budget decisions and dividing up the pie to open up opportunities for more, for the budget issues to be reopened. I'd have to say though, if there comes along a multi-million-dollar project that's not ready for town meeting and there is an effort to have a special town meeting, which is how we got the high school and the middle school, that you're as much as you might not like to have that considered outside of an annual town meeting, it often happens. The issue around maybe should zoning be in the fall. Turns out that the workload for the planning board is a key consideration and whether that makes sense. And right now, that if you have a fall town meeting, that would require the planning board to be doing most of its heavy lifting and engaging the public during the summer, which may not be an advantageous time. In fact, there's some of the feedback that I got was having a June town meeting this coming year actually gives the planning board all the time that they would need to get ready, have their articles done, and then have their hearings. And if they're looking for an earlier hearing date to take advantage of that, then that seems to work. So it doesn't answer the question of how do you have two shorter town meetings? Unless, and this is just another idea, and not even a suggestion. But if there, what would work, I'd be interested to know in our considering this, what would work for voters to, what would having a town meeting that just meets on, one Monday and then the next Monday or 2 Mondays later or something, does that help at all? Or is that better than 3 or 4 nights in a row? Just to test the idea of what does 2 smaller meetings look like?
And, Shannon, this is something we can cost out. That's an interesting question. I think, part of what we heard from the survey was no, no to the weekend, no to, no to spreading the higher interest, but at the same time, I think we want to come back and look at that a bit. Thank you. I'm gonna go to Katie online and then to Eric Van Loon.
Yeah,
Katie, please.
I actually think spreading out the days so they're not right next to each other would be hugely impactful for parents. If we did like 1 week a Monday, the next week a Tuesday, the next week a Wednesday, because kids have activities on various days. I could get a babysitter once a week for 3 weeks, but it's really hard to find one 3 days in a row and to be out of the house for that amount of time. So I think that would be actually an intervention that could help families quite a bit. So I think it's worth exploring. And I don't think we really got at that with the survey questions, other than if people can, I think people just want to come on one night and not multiple nights. But I think we should really explore this idea. I think it would be really helpful.
Good, thank you. Yeah, please, Eric, please.
Yeah, the other dimension of this is getting the facility. And it's been, I mean, when you think of what is involved in setting up, first of all, setting up all of the equipment and taking up the gymnasium and everything else, and the setup and the takedown.
Right.
That is one issue. The second issue, which has been a problem in the past, is getting even 3 nights in a row. The school department will say, well, we've got the spring show and we've got this and we've got that. So as much as that might have an appeal, again, I think we've got to keep focused on things which can really have a possibility of being done in the short term. And unless there's some building in Concord that I'm not aware of, it seems like if we change the parameters too much, we will have recommendations which are great theoretically and impossible to be implemented.
Understood. Good, thank you. Kristen Haggerty, and then I'm gonna move forward. Kristen, please.
Regarding, thanks Keith for looking into that. And regarding the, kind of less feasible, I did hear feedback also that was like, yeah, if it was every Monday for 3 weeks, that would be better than 3 days in a row. That being said, the people who said that also said to me, well, I'm only going to come for the articles I'm interested in anyway. So we don't need to change everything if we do understand people's kind of patterns of participation.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Chase, I have a couple of.
I have just a quick question.
Alice Coffin, please.
Keith, I have a question for you. When
Yeah.
you're looking at 2 town meetings a year, have you considered in your research having high interest articles like citizen petitions on the off season, and have the main business meetings as we currently schedule them before
That wasn't something specific. I suppose that it could be. I'm not sure that,
I can comment on that actually.
yeah, I mean, I prefer to have me personally, I prefer to have citizen petitions come up when there's a large crowd. And if we only had a special town meeting for citizen petitions and no town business, I'm not sure that's.
So I'll answer concisely,
Yeah.
because I'm watching the clock, of course. So regular town meeting, just 10 signatures will get you on the warrant. Special town meeting, it's 100. Either way, that's not a lot. And so one could expect to have citizen petitions at either meeting. There's no way to sort of push them all out to one. Chase, I'm gonna get you in just a second. So increasing public engagement. I've been doing some work on engagement, so I wanted to offer this model as a way of thinking a bit about public engagement or non-engagement as sort of a ladder. If you're familiar with like a marketing funnel, it's analogous to that. So 4 stages, 4 rungs of ladder, so to speak. Begins with awareness, do we even know the town meeting is going on? And do I understand, do the things that they talk about at town meeting or for town meeting, do they register? Do I understand them at all? The second stage is, do I feel that things are relevant, right? Is this thing gonna impact me? And do I care about how much it's gonna impact me, right? Do they care? Is the topic of the meeting or the board meeting or the whatever relevant to me? The third rung, so to speak, is effort, right? What does it take? Is it a lot to do, right? Is it convenient for me to get to meeting? Do I have the means to get to meeting? Is it, it's a difficult way to sort of differentiate, but if I can't leave the house, I'm not able. If it's expensive for a babysitter, maybe it's inconvenient, maybe it's inability. And then complexity, how much preparation do I have to do to feel like I'm able to sort of do a good job participating? So what's the effort, to the threshold of effort? And then finally, what are my expectations around experience, right? Will it be good to be there or will it be really frustrating? Will my vote make a difference? And will I feel better about being in town or will I feel awkward about not being in town in terms of belonging? And so a really coarse framework with each of these different, sort of factors is things that sort of, in my experience, and my understanding, sort of affect the process of engaging or disengaging. And so, the study, the analysis that Katie did looking at distribution of voters by age, against the distribution of registered voters, identified that in Concord's town meeting, we're not seeing voters under 40 at town meeting relative to how they're registered. There's some qualifications to that, but I think it's a really coarse takeaway is, there's a group of voters that we're not seeing. And the question with them, for example, is it an issue of awareness? Is it an issue of relevance, of effort, of experience? If you look at the voters in a different demographic, for example, the parents with young kids, is it an issue of awareness, relevance, or effort? And so a framework like this can help us as we think about how to brainstorm and make changes around engagement, can help us sort of guide that work a bit. And with that, Chase, I'm going to go to you for your presentation. I guess what I need to do is to bring up your slides, right?
Yeah, I can share. You gave me the ability to share, so hold on.
Oh, perfect. Okay, go ahead and share, please.
Awesome.
Do I need to, I'll stop sharing? Okay, good, we can see you.
Perfect.
Good, thank you.
First of all, thank you. Second of all, I don't know that I have officially and formally met everybody. I joined halfway through this. I have been listening quite a bit and sort of jumping in where appropriate. Before I jump in, I'll just note that my goal with presenting this is not to flush out what I'm calling sort of alternative ideas, but rather just put forth the concept of what a subcommittee might look like so that we can go explore them. So I'll kind of dive in here. I'm going to move quickly in the interest of time. And again, my goal is not to kind of debate each slide, but just sort of lay this all out for you folks and see if there's support for a subcommittee. So really the problem statements, slow and steady decline in participation. I think, Eric, you just did a great job of highlighting the work of Katie and Kristen on this may not be representative of the town's overall population.
Wait, I already have a
Um,
question for you, Chase.
Yes. Uh-oh.
Because you're saying what I'm hearing, but so when you say that it's not representative of the larger demographics of Concord, could you just say what you mean? Because when we hear that, I can't qualify it, so I don't know how to confirm or, okay, sorry, and then I'll let you talk.
Yeah, so two ways I can answer that question. One would be the official town meeting study committee way, which I'm unqualified to do. So I'll give you the Chase Thompson anecdotal version, which is I've lived here for 8 years. This was the first year I knew of town meeting. When I got put onto this committee, I texted my group chat of 12 other Concord dads that have all lived here for years. 8 of them had never heard of town meeting, and the 4 who had, only one knew what was done there, and that was Simon Cataldo. So my lived experience and my strong hypothesis is that the representation of the town meeting is largely skewed towards people that have lived here either a very long time or are just overall the demographic we see in answering the surveys, voting in local elections, and that is not representative of like the actual town demographics. Is that a fair answer?
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And Keith, I loved your cohort circles around the folks that attend, the folks that want to but can't, and those that, you know, maybe don't care or trust that others are doing it. I added a 4th circle of what I kind of just touched on, which was folks that just are not aware. Or if they are sort of loosely aware of town meeting, they might not have any idea what happens there and why it matters to them. Again, purely anecdotal, but so far everyone in my sphere of Concord would fall mostly into that yellow bucket. And so that's really, you know, one of the main drivers for how I'm thinking about this. So far, we've discussed a lot of different things. I'm already on to bullet point 2, improving voting speed, things around discussion, so streamlining, possible adjustments to style and timing, and then remote participation. I think one of the things that I noticed, and by the way, I forgot to say in the beginning, thank you to Carmen, Katie, and Eric for helping me flesh out these thoughts prior. So some of the things that we had discussed when I was putting these, you know, pen to paper was, I think these are really good ideas, absolutely things that deserve to be implemented, but wouldn't necessarily solve the goal of that big yellow circle that we talked about earlier, with the exception potentially of remote participation, but that's largely outside of our control, and I think we acknowledge is a long ways off. So that being said, I think this concept of trying to do something different in order to be better, a lot of the things that we've talked about and discussed, it seems other towns have already attempted or have talked about or have looked at, again, with mixed results. So this thought experiment came to mind, which was, if we stripped away the historical meaning behind town meeting and all of the, you know, legality and things that come with that, and just asked the question, how would we get the largest and most diverse population of Concord residents to an event? And again, the goal for this is not to figure out what those things would be, but rather just put forth the concept of, if we take a subcommittee that goes through that thought experiment, put some things up on the board, and figures out how, Eric, I thought you did a great job. I wanted to add now the effort one that you put in here, but how to figure out how to increase awareness, get people to prioritize and turn them into what we call net promoters. This is a corporate America thing that I've done for many years, but essentially get the message out to the most number of people, make them care, make them get excited, and then when they go to the event, make them want to come back. And I know a lot of those concepts don't necessarily feel congruous with like local government and town meeting, but I think if we take that approach, we'll come up with some ideas that might fit pretty well. So the specific ask was to just get a small group of volunteers to form a subcommittee, come up with some of these ideas, and really figure out which ones would work from a, you know, economic, logistical, and legal standpoint, so we could come back to this larger committee with the pros and cons, the body of work. My assumption is anything that's even remotely significant that we might want to suggest to the select board would result in some continuous body of work. I wouldn't expect the select board to be able to go and implement those types of things, or the town committee. Hold on one second. This is very relevant to my current problem. Sweetheart, I'm right in the middle of presenting. Can you go upstairs, baby girl? In 10 minutes, okay? Thank you. I love you so much. Sorry, that wasn't planned. Okay. So just ideas I've had around awareness, leveraging local community groups, parents groups, PTO, preschools, local businesses. I know that's going to be a hot button issue, but it's just something that I know works when we, again, go through the thought experiments of like how to get people to an event. Local businesses can be a huge part of that. They have their own social media channels. They're very involved in the community. Leveraging local schools for assignments. We've talked about doing videos and potentially using artificial intelligence. That would be an awesome project for high school age students that are interested in those things. I'm not going to go through all these. I think you kind of get the idea. A subcommittee could come up with lots of maybe different or outside of the box ideas that we could flush out and then come back to this committee with. So I'll let you guys read through these in your own time in the interest. I will leave you with this quote because I loved it. TLDR, we have to kind of move with the times. So thank you.
Good, Chase, thank you. And so, we've booked time for a subcommittee meeting, because, it's public notice, right? And a space. So we have time booked for a meeting, Tuesday, a week from tomorrow, here, actually. So he said, welcome, I'll come. But I think, the ask again is just if folks are interested in meeting to brainstorm, so to speak, in public around this problem, that would be great. Parashar, I'll go to you.
Yeah, Chase, thank you very much. I think those were some really good ideas. And I guess a question maybe, and maybe it's a suggestion, I don't know. But I personally, after hearing this, would think it would be really helpful if we could actually hear from the 8 or 10 folks in your group that were not aware of town meeting. And the reason I say this is because here you're speaking to the choir a bit. We're all aware, and I sort of ask myself, well, I got the bridge, I got this. How could you not be aware? So I'd really love to hear and understand the information sources and sort of why or how they are not aware of this. Because I think if we don't get to that underlying issue, I'm afraid we might miss the boat in terms of some of these activities you're talking about, all of which, by the way, are great. And I'll give you an example, right? Like in my work with the finance committee, it was very clear that the PTA groups at the schools, they were all aware of town meeting because of the annual issues around the budget. So this is why I'm asking, it would be really good to truly understand how is that possible, right? And not in a accusatory manner, but just to understand what do we have to do to reach those folks.
Good, thank you. Kristen Haggerty, please.
Thanks, Chase. This is great, and I love the energy behind it. And so very excited to, kind of brainstorm and just put everything on the board and then, see what sticks. So my question is kind of like piggybacking on Parashar's is, how do you or your peers think that things get done? For example, like we have immaculate parks and, tennis courts and things like that. For example, we have, a light plant who, we rarely lose power, but, we could go on for a long, long time. So it would be good to kind of learn about that. How do we think things are done? And the answer is usually like, well, I never thought about it, but that's something that I would want to kind of have some more information about.
Yeah, I would just real quick on both of those. I think like the awareness, the top of the funnel doesn't matter. I mean, if they don't enter the top, the rest doesn't matter. So I think that is a really big issue. I do feel there's a particular relevance now to reach this audience, given the increase in taxes. I think a lot of people didn't pay a whole bunch of attention, and all of a sudden, like $1,000 will make me pay attention. So I think we have a pretty good opportunity to go attack that. And that's, I believe, what you would hear from my peer group is that they didn't need to even think about it until more recently.
Good, thank you. Chase, do we need more discussion? With a clear call to action?
Quick question,
Yeah.
for subcommittee, how many people, what's the max limit that can go, and do we need to figure that out ahead of time so we don't have too many people show up? I don't
know.
remember.
Alice, do you
I
know?
didn't think that you could have too many people. But I think it's just, you should name who is going to be on it because you're being tasked to do something. And that's really, I think, how we have been defining, subcommittees.
So legally, the entire committee here can be a subcommittee. That's the way the finance committee
Okay,
is structured. So the guideline subcommittee is actually the entire FinCom. So it doesn't really matter. Size doesn't matter.
Yeah, I put 2 to 3 because I didn't know what other number to put. I think the more ideas, the better. The trade-off being speed. What I suspect, maybe in an ideal state would be the first session is lots of ideas, and then the group takes, sub little components of those to go flush out legality, economics, and feasibility, so that we can come back together with like a shortened down list that people then kind of go and run with. So I think in the beginning, the more ideas, the better.
Do we need names or not is the question.
I think yes.
Okay, so following that, a second, Eric. Who is interested in joining the subcommittee? Okay, so Alice.
I'll raise my hand, Eric.
Alice, Parashar, who else?
I'm also interested. I can't make the meeting next week, but I'm interested.
Okay, Katie,
I'll do it.
Keith. Who's not interested? No judgment, right? I mean, Eric, go ahead.
I was just, if, I didn't know whether you wanted a motion to create it, or whether, if you do, I'll make the motion, if you don't,
Do we
ignore it.
need a motion for it? I don't know. I mean,
Your call.
Yeah, I think you can just, you're basically appointing a subcommittee as you're doing this.
Okay,
Yeah, I think this is within your.
okay, good.
share.
I'm
Good.
interested too, but I see Carmen, she might have comment on the creation.
Yeah, Carmen, please.
Hi, I don't have any comments on the creation. I think that Phil is correct that the chair can create and appoint the subcommittee if he wishes. I'm happy to participate. I don't really count because I don't have a vote, but I'm still happy to participate.
Good, thank you. So good, so I'll declare the subcommittee established. I think I'm concerned about a quorum for the committee if I put everybody on the committee.
I think you should just do the ones who volunteer
Yeah,
today.
yeah.
That's what Parashar is saying. It should be okay.
No, but the
Okay.
problem is the quorum issue. So if we have only 4 or 5, it's just a lot easier to deal with a quorum that way. And
Okay.
then other folks can attend if they want to listen in or whatever.
Oh, that, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, I see.
Yeah.
Okay, so Chase, you're on the committee. I'll go on the committee. Alice, I know sometimes you can make it, sometimes you can't. So I'm thinking about a quorum that's, easy to get, easy to count on for attending.
I don't have travel plans, so.
Okay, so
Yeah.
So Alice, Kristen, you think you can make it?
Are they always gonna be on Tuesdays?
I don't know,
Oh, okay.
whatever the future schedule is gonna need to accommodate, right? But, we're Monday.
Yeah, I guess if you have
Tuesdays,
4 people who can more consistently be there, that's probably like, right, if we had 4, that'd be a good number. Quorum
Yeah.
would be 3.
Go with 3. Okay, so Chase, Eric,
Alice,
and Alice.
I thought Keith said he
And
wanted to.
Keith,
And I'd also raise my hand.
Parashar, and.
yeah. I mean, so you have
Okay.
plenty of volunteers. We just have to make sure that we have a
Yeah,
number and a quorum.
Good. I think we're set then. Okay, any other business for the meeting tonight? I recognize Ned Perry, please. Thank you, Ned.
I'm Ned Perry, 362 Bedford Street. Some meetings ago, I heard about some training sessions. But I haven't heard them recently. And I have heard in the community an issue about credibility, which came up earlier tonight. I think your committee has a significant problem with credibility. I think Eric Benlin was absolutely right that when motions are made, they should be heard, discussed, and voted on. This went same on the representative that proposed motion that was side table. Unfortunately, many of the facts that are being kicked around here are not facts, in fact. Carlisle does not have what has been asked to be looked into. They have a separate session of town meeting, or a separate segment at a retirement home. So it's like a different session at the high school for us. They have a different session, but it is a session of, so it's, you can look into it all you want, but that's what I think you're gonna find out. I would strongly recommend that this committee encourage Carmen and the town clerk to do a training session or 2 training sessions on town meetings, so you understand what you're all talking about here in Concord. As Mr. Bergman pointed out, every town does town meeting differently. You can go to any other town and pick up great ideas, bring them back here, and their reasons for or against. But until your committee holds together, understands your charge and focuses on that charge, and you as the chair listen to your committees, and the more people you can have in the room rather than remotely, the better you're gonna be. And maybe you can get some of the credibility back after 22 sessions to have that report at the select board meeting a week ago. Didn't show a lot of accomplishments. And people are really wondering what you're all doing, and your committee members have voiced that outside of your presence. So I strongly recommend sitting down with Carmen, sitting down with Kari Kamari, and having a session learning about town meeting. And the public should be invited. You can see I did one in 2004, several in 2004, one at the Wheeler Center. I did one at Adult Education Workforce Booth in 2003, 2004. I did them throughout my service. We also did a DVD, which is available in both libraries on Open Town Meeting. And I just think this committee needs to better understand and each member of this committee needs to better understand what Concord Town Meeting does and doesn't do and why. There's a reason it takes a month to get our warrant out. The warrant doesn't come out in a thick book, just statement. The warrant comes out in a nice thin warrant book that everybody gets to carry to town meeting and use, or sits on the living room table to read, or sits at the desk. Please, try and better understand what you're talking about, so that the community will, when they get your recommendations, will have some credibility in putting this forward.
Good, thank you, thank you. And with that, anything else? Okay, 2 minutes, please. David Allen?
Of course, I signaled early on, and I have sat here waiting to be recognized. I'll notice that my earlier comment about the cultures of town meetings reflects directly to what that is, and there are very particular cultures. I'm quite excited to hear Chase's proposal. As you are aware from the beginning, some of us have been saying, please take on as your responsibility the much larger problem of engaging folks in democracy. I would suggest the following as you consider this. If you were inviting folks to a dance party, you wouldn't actually play football when you got to the dance party, you dance. Of course, the point is, you're inviting folks to a legislative session to deliberate and vote. And I very strongly suggest that you take that as your guiding light in what you're gonna do Tuesday and going forward. Be sure that what you're inviting folks to, they understand. In fact, you're going to do a primer of municipal finance. You might do a primer on local democratic governance by the citizen. I accumulated 3 items. Beyond this, let me say them very quickly. Wi-Fi, I spent a part of my life, and you may too have, Eric, I'm not sure. Which among many other things, I became familiar with problems of capacity in Wi-Fi system. There are specialized companies out there that will sell you a piece of gear that allow you to have certainly thousands of people in a room. But you have to buy that gear. You don't buy that gear, it ain't gonna happen. You're gonna overload the server in a second and it's gonna crash. If you don't solve that problem, you don't get somebody technically competent on this, you're gonna face what the sort of thing that Ned's talking about here, not going to be legitimate. On ADA, once again, Ned brought up one of the other towns. I know from experience that my memory, even at 83, tells me that it's Sudbury is exactly the sort of thing that you're talking about. You might as well go have a conversation, folks, in Sudbury if that's the case. I have a much larger point, but I'm going to save it for another evening. We'll get to the third bit here. The one that I said that you want to hear. I'm back from walking amongst penguins, and I can't remember what I told you before you went. But as a result of the group of us, you led it over in the Wheeler Center, and there I was, a nice woman from Westford introduced herself. In any event, Westford has voted to do remote voting, not remote participation, but remote voting. I followed up with this woman who had run the one of the committees that Westford had, and she put me in touch with the town manager over there. And just yesterday, actually, I got yet another reference. I'll be following up with David Carr within a day or two. And of course, before I left, Dave Bernstein and I talked about this. If you don't save time for citizen comment, I take it as perfidious. Eric, to be plain about it, okay? You are here to serve the public. If you don't save time for me, Ned, the rest of us, something ain't right. Listen to what Ned is saying. Before I left, Dave Bernstein and I talked about how the 3 towns might conceivably form a pilot. And we will, and Dave Carr, and I'll get with Dave as well, Bernstein. I'll be following up with Westford. Now, we have a situation here that most of us that are professionals are all too familiar with. We have one right here in Concord, where there are 2 250th committees going down parallel and fighting with each other. And we can have that here if you like. I sure as hell hope not. Of course, that's the whole reason why I said you wanted to hear this. I will be pursuing, because we've been doing this for 10 years now with Westford and Wayland, that will, to me, make incredible sense if we coordinate our efforts. Among other things, when you go for a home rule petition, it has to be the same home rule petition amongst all the towns that are gonna do it. I frankly am not satisfied that 3 towns is enough, but we will be having discussions about that. And if you would be so interested as to coordinate, so we can go down the road together, who knows what good results we might get. I find it laughable, frankly, that we have 250th committees here. I would not like to be part of the same sort of thing in this undertaking.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, we're closed. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming out.